Hello, Sarah of SEK Handmade here, and today I want to share with you how to make a project on Ravelry. There are so many reasons that you could make a project on Ravelry. If you're not a member of Ravelry, it's free for users. And it's a really interesting platform with lots of great uses. So I do recommend you check it out. Um, But let's talk about some of the reasons you might want to make a project, because you may have been on Ravelry and using Ravelry for years and never made a project on Ravelry, and that's totally okay. But it does have lots of fun functionality that I think you could really enjoy using. If you are a pattern tester, some designers will ask that you create a project on Ravelry. And even if you're not a pattern tester, you can create a project on Ravelry linked to any pattern that is for sale or shared on Ravelry. This is a great thing to do as a service to other people and not just the designer. While it does help a designer to sell patterns if they've got lots of projects linked to their pattern, it can really help people who are thinking about purchasing the pattern to look at what other people have made and maybe think, oh, the designer made that in colors that I don't really care for, but this other person made it in my colors and I'm definitely going to make this pattern. Or I thought maybe it would work, but I don't think that's going to work for my body type. But we'll talk another time about how you can use projects that other people post on Ravelry to make decisions about which patterns you buy. But if you post your projects, other people can use your project to make those decisions as well, which can be extremely, extremely helpful. But you can also post projects on Ravelry for completely selfish reasons, which is totally fine too. Let's dive in to how to post a pattern. And I think you'll see as I share with you all of the different things that you can post in a project and log as part of a project, that how it could be a fun way for you to track your own projects that you're working on, whether they are patterns that are sold on Ravelry or not, because you absolutely do not only have to make projects for patterns that exist on Ravelry. All right, so I am going to share my screen with you. So that you can see exactly what I'm going to do here. Share my screen. All right, here we go. So this is my projects on Ravelry. If you don't have a Ravelry account, you can go ahead and make a Ravelry account. And when you log in, let's see, I'm going to take us back home here. When you log in, you will get this home screen, which changes, but generally speaking looks like this. To get to your projects, you're going to come up here to where it says My Notebook. I should mention, unless you sell patterns on Ravelry, you won't have this pro link. That's because I'm a seller on Ravelry. But up here, you will have your notebook. And under your notebook are listed projects, queue, stash, handspun, tools, favorites, library, lots of things we could go into here. But today we're going to go back up to the top and we're going to look at projects. Click on that and it will take you to your projects page. Now, if you've never made a project on Ravelry, this will be empty. Don't panic. That's just because you haven't made any projects, and that's totally, totally fine. I today am going to make a project for this project of mine, which is my Tunisian fade scarf pattern. So to do that, I'm going to come over here to the left side of my screen and click Add a Project. Once you do that, it'll bring up this screen and you can pick which craft your project is a part of. Now, this, if you're using it for yourself, is just for your own reference, but also projects are searchable. So it's I would say best as best practices and kindness to other people to make sure that you label your stuff accurately. So if it's a crochet project, you want to label it as a crochet project. If it's a weaving project, label it as a weaving project. You wouldn't want to confuse anybody who might stumble across your project and say, wait, that's crochet? I thought it was knitting, or vice versa, or whatever. So I'm going to select crochet because this is crochet. You can see Tunisian crochet is a little different than regular crochet, but there's no delineation between Tunisian crochet and regular crochet. So it all just falls under the category of crochet. Next, you're going to enter your project name. This can be the name of the pattern, but it doesn't have to be. So if you want to call this Winter Scarf 2022, you can totally do that. I tend to like to name it whatever the pattern name is, but that's just my personal preference. So I'm going to put in Tunisian fade scarf. Next up, it asks you what pattern you used. So enter the pattern name. I used a pattern, enter the pattern name. I'm just going to copy and paste. Tunisian fade scarf. Now you can say I didn't use a pattern. So if you just made something up and you want to post a project, but you have no intention of making a pattern to go along with it, that's cool. You can absolutely post that. So you can choose, I didn't use a pattern, or you can choose the pattern that I used is not on Ravelry. So if you have a book that you picked up and you're making a sweater out of it, the pattern may or may not, and the book may or may not be on Ravelry. And so you can totally make your project on a pattern that doesn't exist on Ravelry. So I'm going to click continue. And what it's going to show me are all of the patterns that exist on Ravelry that have the words Tunisian fade scarf in them or something related to that. You can see this one doesn't have Tunisian fade scarf in the name. So this action of me clicking choose this pattern links my project to the pattern listing. So you can choose to skip this. You can see you can continue without linking. So even if your pattern is on Ravelry and you don't want it linked to the designer's pattern, that's fine too. You can choose to do that. I'm going to link mine. So I'm going to choose the pattern that is mine. And it'll bring you up to this page, and holy guacamole, look at all of those things that you can do. I'm going to start here just at the top of all of the details that you can add in. That's my name that I placed in when it asked me for the name of the pattern. That is the one that's going to be whatever you want it to be. The pattern name is now, you can see the little linked symbol, linked to the pattern on Ravelry. You can put who you made it for. You can see I make for myself a lot. It already has that linked. You can link to a specific Ravelry user. I don't usually do that. If you have a goal for when you want it finished by, so this is a great way that you can help organize your projects. Say that you are making this scarf for a friend for their birthday, and you know that their birthday is, February 27th. Is that a date in February? Just realizing that was a bad choice. Let's say February 15th. And so you know that to gift them the pattern, you need it done the week before. So you could put in a finished by date. That is by no means required. And then you can choose what size you made. The Tunisian fade scarf comes in a scarf size and a blanket scarf size. So I'm going to say, actually, I'm going to say traditional scarf, because that's the size that I made. You can see I already have my craft selected as crochet, and you can put all sorts of categories along with it. So I can say that this is an accessory for the neck, and it is a scarf. And then you can continue to add categories if you want to. Let's see what components it has. No, none of those really apply. So we're just going to leave it at that. All right. So here you can add tags if you want to. These are searchable by other Ravelry users. So if you wanted to put in Tunisian crochet there, or crocheted scarf, or fingering weight yarn, or Tunisian simple stitch, all of those things are things that other people on Ravelry could be searching for, and then they can see your project in relation to that. It really depends on how detailed you want to be, if you want to do that or not. You can see that you can add a hook or needle here. So this is super helpful if you didn't use the hook suggested in the pattern. If you, let's say you made a sweater and you love the sweater, you wore it for years, the sweater fell apart from all of your love, and you think, gosh, I miss that sweater, and you want to go back and remake that sweater. If you have the hook size here that you used, you can start there for making your next sweater. So you can add a hook size. I believe that I used a K, going off of memory here. If you used multiple hook or needle sizes, you can add as many hooks or needles as you want. This obviously is not just for crochet, so you've got more options there. You can put the pattern gauge in here, and then you can put your gauge here. So if it was a little off, or I'll be honest, sometimes when I do a sweater, if I'm getting stuck on the gauge, sometimes I'll throw the pattern gauge out the window, pick about the right number of stitches I need for the size I'm looking to have the sweater, and dive in there. So that information can be helpful. Again, if you set down a project and come to pick it back up, how was your gauge working out? Sometimes your gauge can change depending on a whole host of factors. Again, another video for another day. But having that information there could be really, really helpful. And then you can add yarn. And so what I'm going to do is, I know I used stroll yarn, and I'm going to hit the link button, and what it'll do is it'll show me the Knit Picks yarn. Stroll comes in the solids, heathers and twists, tonal, hand painted, yada, yada, yada. I used this first one. And so now not only is my pattern, my project linked to the pattern, but now my project is also linked to the yarn. So if somebody is on Ravelry and they're searching, I have 30 balls of stroll fingering yarn, what the heck am I going to do with it? They can search stroll fingering, and projects will come up, and patterns that are related to stroll fingering, and they can use that to say, I like her scarf she made, I'll use it for that. Then you can pick It auto-fills in the colors here for you, so you can pick what colors you used. I know Dove was one of my colors that I used, and you can see for this, I used 3 colorways, this kind of taupey brown, the white, and the gray, and so I can continue to add yarn until I've listed all of my colorways. This can be really helpful if you need to repurchase yarn because you want to make the same thing again, or you think to yourself, gosh, I really love that yarn I used in that scarf, but what was that yarn? If you've made a project for it, you can go to the project and look, and it's all right there for you. Now, you can even enter in your dye lot. You can tell what the closest color is. I believe the Dove is the gray. You can enter in your dye lot. This tells you how many yards are in the skein of yarn. You can type in how many skeins you used. So let's say I used 2 there. It's going to tell me, it's going to calculate for me that I used 100 grams and 462 yards, which can be helpful. I can even list where I purchased it at and link to the purchaser, the date I purchased, the total I paid, what currency I paid. I mean, you can get real in depth. Now, keep in mind, all these things are optional. So you want to think a little bit about like, what's the purpose of creating this project? And if it's just to keep notes on what you made for your own personal use, and you don't need the financials and you don't need the yardage and all that stuff, don't fill in those things. If it becomes too much of a hassle, you won't use it, and it's not a tool for you anymore. So project notes, you can either do public notes here. So I really like to, if I make a sweater and I make adjustments, I like to leave notes about the adjustments I made. And the reason I make those public is because adjusting a sweater can be challenging. And so if someone knows that, if somebody looks at a sweater pattern and says, I don't know if that's going to look good on my body, and they search through the projects and see me and think, well, she has a similar body shape as I do, and the sweater looks good on her, but it looks like she adjusted it, which a lot of times I do because I'm a shorter person. And I've left notes saying, I left out a repeat in the yoke increase, or I extended the body by 3 inches. That can help someone else think, oh, well, I can make those adjustments too. So you can put in public notes. I also, if I post for another designer, I like to say things like fun pattern to make, great notes on how to do the stitches, excellent tutorials, those kinds of things that I feel like are helpful to other people. You can add private notes down here too if you want some notes that you'd like to keep to yourself. Like you could put your measurements in there. You may want to know your bust size, but you may not want everybody on Ravelry to know your bust size. So you could put that in a private note and then other people won't see that. Adding photos, I think, is A, fun, and B, really helpful to other people to be able to see what the pattern looks like. So I'm just going to select these photos that I've taken of my Tunisian fade scarf. You just have to, actually, let's back up. I did that kind of fast. So if you add photos, you can either click on the box, I believe, or click on add photos. It'll bring up an additional box. You can upload them from your computer, which is where we are here. You can upload them from Instagram, Google, Flickr, upload from a URL, or check your settings. I usually just have these on my phone or computer already. And so I just upload from my computer. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to choose my files. I'm going to go to my desktop because that's where I place these. I'm going to select the pictures that I want, and I'm going to hit open. That, you can see, does not make my pictures appear. Now you have to hit upload to actually load them into Ravelry. So this is going to take just a second, and you can see them start to pop up here. And in here, if you want, you can rearrange them, and you just click on them and drag them to different locations, and that's how they will show up in your project. So you can say finished with the photos, and there are all of my photos now along the side. You can do that and be totally done, or there's a whole nother sidebar over here that you can fill in. You can do the status of your project: in progress, finished, hibernating, if you started the project and you got mad at it. I call that putting it in timeout. You can note that, or you can even say you frogged it, and that can be helpful to you to see, like, oh, I started that pattern and I decided to frog it for whatever reason. So I have finished this project. You can rate your happiness by these little balls of yarn. That guy's not very happy. That guy's maybe a little confused. He seems, whatever. He's a little happier. He's thrilled. I loved how my project came out, so I'm going to pick thrilled. Then you can mark your progress and just estimate how far along you are. So let's say, I'm 90% finished. I can click that. I'm 100% finished with this one, so I'm going to click that. You can click date, choose your date started and your date finished. That can be an interesting thing to keep track of if you want to. Because if I say I make this scarf, I made it for a friend, I gave myself 2 months to make it. It took me 2 weeks. And I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to make that scarf again for another friend. It gives me an idea of, oh, last time it took me about 2 weeks. It's a faster project than I thought it would be. And then you can rate the pattern. I personally don't rate my own patterns because that feels like maybe not the most honest thing to do. But you can give it an overall rating. You can rate it for clarity, and you can rate it for difficulty, because while the designer may have thought it was a beginner pattern, if you struggled with it, you could say that you would rate it more of a medium pattern or a difficult pattern. And then you can see there are ranges in there, like harder medium, medium medium, easier medium. And so you can edit that, and then you'll see it's dropped in all about my yarn, and I can also rate the yarn. So once you've done that and entered all of the information that you desire to have in your project, you're just going to save your changes, and there's your project totally finished. And you can see all the information there together. Now, if I go to my projects, which I can either get to back through here, or you can see it's listed up here on the bar up here, I could just click projects. Also, if you look at this and you're like, that's not the picture I meant to have first, or, oh, I was going to put a note, you can, go back up here to edit, and you can always edit your projects. So they're not like set in stone by any means. So always you can feel free to go back and edit them. I mean, so if you make this scarf twice, the first time you can add more yarn, you can add more pictures, you can add more notes if you made adjustments to it, all those things. But when I go back to my projects, it should be here in the projects. Let's refresh this page and see. Okay, it's not coming up on front. Now you can see these are by recently finished. You can select to filter your projects by craft. Let's say you want to just look at your knitting projects if you knit and crochet. And then I have chosen, you can choose large photos. I currently have it as thumbnail. Let's look. What does it look like for large photos? So they're just a little bigger thumbnails or a list. And that gives you no pictures, but just a list of your projects. So let's go back to thumbnails, and You can have them sorted. You can have your whips first so that you can see when you first pull up your projects. Ooh, those are the things I haven't finished yet. May jog your memory for something you put in hibernation. By favorites, by recently started, by finished, by recently added, by name. So if you're looking for a specific project, it may help to do it by name. And so now these are all alphabetical, starting with the A's and the B's. And so if we scroll down, we're going to see, because it's Tunisian fade, it's down at the bottom. And then you can just click on that to see your project again and edit it. So there you go. That is how you create a project on Ravelry. I hope you have found this helpful. If you don't want to miss out on any of my tips and tutorials, check out the description below for links to sign up for my email, as well as to follow me on social media. Be sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so that YouTube can notify you when I post new videos as well. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions about creating a project on Ravelry. And I'd love to know if you've created projects before or if you're about to create your first one. Thank you so much for watching and happy crafting.